Hello everyone, Steve here. So for today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Chainsaw Man, specifically the end of the series as a whole. So I'm gonna for those who are probably unaware, the series, a manga series by the name of Chainsaw Man, has like officially ended 2 days ago, March 24th. Yeah, March 24th of 2026. Chainsaw Man has officially ended. I don't think Fujimoto has any plans of making part three whatsoever. Even though people are like trying to like theorize or cope, essentially, generally coping, wondering like this has got to be like some type of joke. Fujimoto's probably gonna make like a part three, and I doubt there's gonna be a part three at all. Or maybe Fujimoto could do a part three of Chainsaw Man, but I don't know how that will work. But either way, I'm not gonna be talking about if a Chainsaw Man Part 3 could be a thing. Like someone already made a video about that, and I'm not gonna copy them. Instead, I'm just gonna be talking about like the ending of the series and what's my thoughts of it as a whole. What's my thoughts on the ending as well as the series as a whole. So enough of me yapping. Let me just get into it. So yeah, I feel like the ending for Chainsaw Man, I won't say it's like bad nor good. It's more like of a very bittersweet ending. Like Dingy finally gets to like live like a normal life. That being was like that being he has a job, has a roof over his head. He's able to eat good food. Generally, he's not no longer like living the. Essentially, he's not longer like living in his little hut in the middle of in the woods and just eats like nothing but sliced bread. But the only difference being is that Bucci doesn't have Buchita with him at all. Since we know that Buchita essentially like erased himself of after realizing the only way for Dinchi to pretty much live a a peaceful life is to erase himself from existence, which ends up like creating like a new timeline or something like that. I don't know. Of course, and we do see some changes, of course, in this new timeline that Dingy is in. That being, the events from like the first chapter still happen. That being, he ends up getting jumped on by his boss. Oh no, one by his boss's minion, who ends up like making in a contract with the zombie devil. Oh, and he was going to die, but instead of no longer living. He ends up being saved by Power, who mysteriously pops out of nowhere at all. Pops out of nowhere, slays the zombie devil, and ends up like saving it simply because he's almost like a dog and she likes dogs. But afterwards, she then gets interrupted by by someone at first that we think it's Makima, but it turns out it's Nayuta, of course, in this timeline pretty much. And afterwards, both Power and Dingy are now pretty much working for the public safety, of course, run by Nayuta, of course, as essentially Nayuta is now the head of public safety instead of Makima, pretty much. But anyways, so pretty much Dingy and Power end up going to a school to like kill a devil. Afterwards, Dingy ends up like saving not saving, but ends up like saving Asa from like fall. Being thinking she was like being attacked by by Bucky, being attacked by Bucky, of course, which he ends up doing so, and Asa has him like thanking him, calling him like saying quote, "Thank you, Chainsaw Man," which he instantly instantly like gives which pretty much like which pretty much he ends up getting like a big thump in his heart, of course, and we end up seeing like Buchita in it. I'm not sure if like we're not sure if like that's supposed to be like some type of metaphor of like Buchita's like still within Stingy even after he raised his assistance, or maybe be the I don't know the Chainsaw Devil is still, or the or maybe the Chainsaw Devil could be brought back, but sadly, that's the reason. Yeah, but sadly, the reason why Asa pretty much called, the, yeah, Dingy Chainsaw Man is because he was like wielding a chainsaw, which kind of breaks his hopes. But afterwards, him and Power end up like heading clocking out of work and end up going somewhere to eat, and that's pretty much how the series officially ends. Which very bittersweet. Yeah, it's a very bittersweet ending. I know a lot. I've heard like a lot of people, of course, complaining about it, saying it's probably like it's the worst ending that they ever read, of course, and are trying to like I don't know, oh, and trying to they just feel bad, which I understand, of course, why they feel bad for the series as a whole. Like I love Chainsaw Man, and pretty much like I love the series as much, even though like there's a lot of there's a lot of things that are unsolved, of course, and there's a lot of questions, of course, that aren't really answered. But either way, I really love the series. Yeah, I really love the series, and I probably love to see what Fujimoto will come up next after now that he's done with Chainsaw Man. So yeah, but more importantly, I would like to see how it gets adapted in like the anime, of course. Like I feel like I feel like for the anime, there's definitely gonna be a lot of changes, of course, in not yeah in for part two, for no or for the second half of part one, as well as like for part two, of course. But but that's not gonna happen until like I don't know, probably like I don't know 2038 or way ahead in the future, pretty much. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for today. So, yeah. Adios.